weekly meet. This is the JupyterLab weekly meeting. It is Wednesday, October 4th. Looks like we have 12 participants here. Just want to say hello to everybody and welcome any newcomers. We're here to help and support and connect with the community. So anybody, please feel free to come to these meetings and chat with all of the people here. Okay, so we have some agenda items, and the first agenda item is Jason Whale. Jason?
Hey, thanks everyone. So I got a couple of issues that I wanted to bring up before the team. The first is a colleague of mine has noticed an issue with in iPyWidgets with the file upload widget with kernel gateways. And I was discussing this yesterday at Triage. I thought it might be something to discuss here, that this is kind of blocking some ongoing work. And it's been known since July 5th. I'm wondering if anybody knows like a good way forward or a good person to talk to about this.
Have you brought it up at the server call?
I have not. I could bring it up. I guess that's tomorrow morning, right?
Yeah, because I think some people on that call will know more about the kernel gateway side of things.
Okay. Yeah, I also noticed there's a widgets meeting every other Tuesday morning. I could make it to the one next Tuesday, the 10th, but I didn't want to wait for another roughly a week. Okay, thanks.
So you're looking for general feedback, I guess, about this issue?
Well, not just feedback, but like, is there a way forward on this? Because one of my colleagues is trying to use the file upload widget and is also using the kernel gateway and is kind of blocked by this known issue.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would suggest maybe posting kind of in that community or hit up maybe Jason Grout, and he may be able to direct you further.
Okay. All right. I usually don't call into the server call, but one of my teammates does, so I will follow up with them. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we have Darian.
Oh, sorry. One other ping on my agenda item.
Go ahead.
There was a pull request, Jupyter pull 698, which concerns officially adding a no recording policy or no recording bots policy for meetings like this. We typically have an on the record, off the record portion of the meeting for anyone watching this on YouTube, and only the on the record part is shared to YouTube. In the recent meetings, we've noticed at least one person like capturing data about the meetings for purposes we don't understand because the bot does not engage us in conversation. So if this has been approved, but if anyone could merge it in, I'd appreciate it.
I can merge it. Is there any discussion we want to have first? Anyone here? It basically says, please don't record is my summary of the pull request.
Yes, in bold. Please do not record meetings on your own.
Yeah, right below where it says these are recorded. Please don't make an additional recording, basically. Mm-hmm. And I'll give 10 seconds, but I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you all.
Thank you, Isabella.
All right. Looks like Darian's up next.
I'm going to speak strangely because I have a cough. Please forgive me. I will stop when I need. So I have been working on a virtual scroll bar component that appears when your notebook windowing mode is set to full virtual rendering, and only then. And it has extension points to improve several aspects of it, but I think as a minimum viable iteration of the feature, it's ready for people to look at. So I've linked the PR in the notes, and I will share my screen for a minute and show the feature running on my local JupyterLab. If I can find the right window, which I cannot. So sorry, everyone. No, okay, hold on. It's got JupyterLab in it. That should be pretty easy to find. No. Nope. Oh, that might be it. There we go. Okay, are you guys seeing JupyterLab on my screen?
Yes.
With a virtual
cool.
scrolling notebook.
Yeah, okay, cool. So just gonna start from scratch. Hey, look, that's a bug right there. Did you see I had this, right? And then I refreshed my page and I lost my layout. Oh, this time I kept it. Well, there you go. Anyway, so here's a notebook, and it is fairly big. So it has this component with these cell numbers in it. And there's 69 cells in this notebook, and you can click on this to jump around. And just to compare it to what it's replacing, this is a, let me just double check. Yeah, this is a full windowing mode notebook, right? So it's got this button that appears, and you can toggle it, and now you end up with this behavior, which is what we currently ship with, because the scroll bar doesn't yet know about the full size of the notebook, which is kind of how we got here to begin with. So this replaces that with this component. And if you don't have that turned on, then this is a bug I found in the last call too. The button disappears anyway. The whole thing doesn't. Let me refresh my page so you see. So yeah, if you don't have windowing set to full, you're not going to get that component. And yeah, please check out the PR. That is it. Actually, okay, there the button appeared. Cool. You can see that bit. Yeah.
Anybody have any comments, feedback?
Thank you.
All right, looks like Frederick is next up.
Hey, just to follow up that the new policy for member-raised PR has been approved by vote. I'm working on adding a CI job for having the be yearly ping to all members for checking if they want to keep their membership at the level they have currently. Something I forget also last week, I think. It's the Jupyter community subgroup is looking for sub-projects representative for doing some interviews. There is 3 seats available per sub-project. I send an email with more detail to all council, and yeah, we should iterate to, and we should be part of these interviews, let's say. And yeah, I'm glad if other people than me can go. I have lots of things in my plate currently, so yeah, please volunteer yourself. I think the interview are only half an hour, and so yeah, Martha may say no if she wants. No pressure. I just send it like normally on the email list, and that's it for me.
Frederick, does the membership proposal, so this notification that you get asking whether you want to retain your membership, this is, I guess you'll be getting a notification from GitHub that should show up in email, right?
Yeah, the idea will be to create an issue with tick box or something like that. I still have to figure out the layout, but yeah, in which your handle will be mentioned so that you get notification through GitHub.
Okay, thanks. All right, it looks like Mike is up next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I will share my screen and show some cool things I've been working on, because last time there was a mention that maybe we could have more demos again. Do let me know if you can see a window with JupyterLab.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing is already available in a pre-release. Thank you, Frederick. That's version 4.1 alpha 2, and that's the plugin manager. So in addition to the extensions panel in the sidebar, there is now a plugin manager available through settings, then on the toolbar plugin manager, and it shows basically all the plugins that are currently installed, both from JupyterLab itself and from extensions, whether they are enabled or not. And I will decrease the font size a little bit. And those can be disabled individually. So if you accept the responsibility for doing so, I can try to disable the terminal tracker, for example, which means that once I refresh page, I will not have the terminal anymore. Or I could disable the light theme, and let's see what happens. Well, it's not happy because the light theme was disabled. So I can switch to dark and it works again, but I cannot disable both of the themes. So that's one of the safeguards that are in there. There is also a safeguard that you cannot disable some of the core packages, and you cannot disable things which are depended upon by other plugins. So for example, the tooltip extension, it's being currently used by 3 other packages, so I cannot disable that. But if I only wanted to use the dark theme forever after and not the light theme, I could just disable it and potentially have slightly fewer packages loaded up. Please do test if there are any bugs or changes needed. It's easier to fix while we are still in alpha. Are there any questions or comments?
How does this relate to the current plugin manager?
So the current extension manager does not allow you to disable individual plugins. So any extension can ship multiple plugins. Maybe a good example is JupyterLab LSP. So you can see that there is, I don't know, 25 or 30 different plugins. Okay. And previously, extension authors used to have an additional toggle in the settings to allow users to opt out of certain features. But LSP is a good example because, for example, there is this signature feature, which is pretty annoying for some users, and others find it very helpful. So they can just disable it, and after refreshing, it will no longer show up when typing text.
Yeah, that's excellent. This is great. One thing I might suggest is I see at the top you have customize your experience. There's a little explainer up there. You might want to put in there maybe like each extension can ship with multiple plugins built in. That might be a good explanatory phrase to include up there potentially.
So we have such an exact phrase in the documentation. We just were going back and forward whether even this current description is not too much, and was a suggestion to remove the phrasing about performance, potential performance improvements. If you have like exact wording, please open a pull request and we can discuss that, because yeah,
okay.
it's a balance that we need to strike between being helpful and not too verbose.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so switching to the other demo, that's about the inline completer. I will zoom back in, and this feature when I type, so will suggest a new completion in the editor itself. I can switch between completions using alt and bracket. So there are 3 different suggestions. One is not strictly using only built-in syntax, but anyways, and those are pulled from the history. So there is nothing running in the background right now. It's just plain IPython /Jupyter history request, and because it's still being developed, I can only accept using alt end, but in the future version, it will probably be using tab as this normal tab completer does. And we can discuss how we want to enable partial suggestions, such as only accepting the result line by line or character by character, word by word. So how does it work? Well, I just ran these 2 cells and they populated the history with 2 of the 3 examples. One was very old. The third one was a very old experiment from some kind of teaching practice. So that's why there were 3 different ones. And as I type, the results stay there. If I type something different, they disappear and the cell collapses. So we have a bit different setup with we need to avoid changing the height drastically, because if you are in an editor, it doesn't matter because there is always a white space at the end, but the cells, we are shifting a lot of content, so it has some delay before collapsing, so that if there is a new suggestion coming in, it can be shown immediately. And the plan is that this will be disabled by default and only provide the history provider that I showed in JupyterLab core itself. So I will now disable that and show something different. So another example provider that will be published as a separate extension, possibly in JupyterLab organization if we agree to that, but that's for the future. And that one is using an AI model using an Onyx infrastructure. So maybe let's load the model from scratch. It's maybe use this one. It's downloading a model. This one is 350 megabytes, so it will take maybe 5 or 15 seconds more. And there is a number of options. Go on.
Yeah, just a quick thing back on the previous one. The super grayed out is not great from a screen contrast perspective. So I don't know, it looks on dark or whatever, but that's just like not enough contrast for a lot of folks with low vision. Could it, like you're obviously doing some freaky code mirror stuff. Could it be more like a bar to the left of it with like a, green, or one of the things that we're, one of those CSS variables we're not using too much.
Yeah.
That then also showed it with the syntax highlighting. Yep.
So let me re-enable the history one. There is a couple of options. So this is a span element using CSS styles. There is a class, and extensions can override it. It's currently using a font color variable number 4 in JupyterLab, which is this grayish color. And it's not perfect when it comes to contrast, but we can change it to a stronger contrast. But when it comes to background itself, the other option, is also to use a stronger contrast, but italics. When it comes to background, there is an idea that different providers might want to customize how the ghost text appears, and some show background in the brand color. So it has a data attribute telling you which provider it is. Let's see if I can.
Well, and background can kind of fall into the same thing. If it was just a border on the left-hand side, like a 2 or 3, kind of a fat border. Finish the rest of your demo. I'm sorry, it was just the first thing jumped.
No, it's a very good discussion. So if you could leave a comment, ideally with some visual, that would be really helpful, and we can iterate on that as we get more feedback. So yeah, let's disable this one so it doesn't go into the way. But yeah, it's generating, and it's not only asking for the results from the model, it is actually streaming the response as it is being generated. And so I can accept mid-flight or wait until it finishes. I can start writing again, and this cancels the request, and it's running entirely in the browser. So the model was downloaded, it's running in a web worker, communicating via messages back and forth, and one of these messages is cancel, another of the messages is stream a token, etc. Once I approve, it can start generating again, which is kind of not generating something very useful right now, but I didn't provide it with a lot of context. So yeah. It also works in files. And has some bounds on the number of tokens or text which it is feeding into the model. And in that instance, it generates something which appears to be related to the remaining code base, though it's not necessarily useful in itself. But these are very small models. You have to remember that, and that's only for development purposes. I imagine that any real-life providers would use APIs to communicate with models which are running on much larger machines, are faster and potentially more more advanced. And I only have a few of them, but there are more models, especially for text generation. So if I go into a markdown cell, sorry that I didn't preload them, but it's pretty fast, and starts writing some description. It will complete it as it goes. Are there any other questions in the chat? Or
Mike, is there a way to stop the suggestion if you know that you at that particular moment want to just continue manually writing?
yes, that's one of my questions. So there will be an abbreviation, sorry, a shortcut to cancel that, but then blurring cell should do that already. That's what I did to discard that one, but I think escape would be a good shortcut.
Yeah,
so
that's what they use
is,
in Chrome. Use that in Chrome for auto completion, canceling.
Yeah. Yeah, some rough edges, like when it exceeds the available space, it doesn't wrap, but then wrapping doesn't work for code. So it's one of the issues with the current API as available is that I wanted to introduce a delay. So for example, 500 milliseconds, half a second, I can type and it doesn't start auto-generating until I stop for half a second, and only then it does. But it conflicts with a timeout. So the question would be, should the bouncer and timeout be configured on per provider basis or should it be configured globally, or both? The argument for having that globally is that we will avoid ever having a conflict between the bouncer and timeout. So because the debouncer would be on the request method, it might wait until the user stops typing, and in the meantime it timed out. So you can see that once I reduce the debouncer or delay, it works again. And if we had that on a global level, that would not be a problem. Or if we allowed providers to manage their own timeouts, that would not be a problem. But then I can see a case for some users wanting to have a different delay depending on the provider, because some providers are more expensive and maybe they only want to get a suggestion when they manually invoke or wait for a few seconds or something. Okay. If there are no other questions, that's all I had to show, but I'm happy to continue demonstrations if there are any suggestions. Or okay.
Thanks, Mike.
It looks really cool. Thanks so much, Mike.
All right, well, it looks like that concludes the agenda. Is there anything anybody else would like to discuss before we go off the record? All right, brace yourselves. We're going to stop the recording.